All right, guys. Today, I wanted to spend part of the hour today during class. And if you're not in class, I want to make sure I made this video for you. So I wanted to go over the final with you. Um, I know you guys have already gotten your scores, everybody's taken them. I did provide that 5% bonus. You're welcome. Um, but pretty much, the grades are fixed, so they're all set in stone right now. But I still want to go over it with you and kind of go over some of the more commonly missed questions. As I was going through this, I was a little surprised with some of the questions that we missed. I thought there were some that were like super easy that we just, for whatever reason, did not answer correctly. And I just want to clarify a few things that we've kind of missed, more on a consistent basis throughout the semester. So um, we'll go ahead and start here with some of the data. We had 95 kids take the test. Average score was about an 83, 84. That is with the 5% bonus, so it was a little bit lower than that before that. You can see the distribution of A's through F's here. We had a lot of kids up here in the AB range, which is what we kind of want. The DF kids, we might have to think about a couple things. One, whether or not what we're doing right now is enough, because obviously it may not be, but it might have just been just your approach to the exam. I had some kids who had B's in class and they bombed the exam. So I don't know. What does your grade mean right now? I have no idea. But we need to probably take a better approach to not only the course but also the actual assessments. The lowest score was a 23. You know who you were. The highest score was a 103. Again, you know who you were. So good scores on that, obviously. I had a couple kids with 103s, actually. Just kind of going through this. I'm not going to go through every question, just some of the more commonly missed questions, I suppose. This question here about the climatogram. This was one of the more commonly missed ones. Only 47% of us got it right. Which climatogram correctly illustrates a biome located near 30 north and 30 south? We should know, because I've taught it to you, that 30 north and 30 south, that is desert biome territory. All right, deserts, hot, right? So year round, hot. So we probably would figure that it would either be C or B, because that's where the temperature lines are very high. But also in the desert, not a lot of rain, right? So it probably shouldn't be B, because that shows a lot of precipitation throughout all these months. But in letter C, you can see that, again, high temperatures, not a lot of precipitation. So that's the obvious choice. So only 47% got that one. I was kind of surprised. Number seven. Number seven, 55% of us got this one right. The zone that has the greatest amount of biodiversity. So, obviously we've got sort of like a coastline here. We've got like the ocean out here, whatever. This is like a cross section. So what we kind of have to remember about biodiversity is one, especially in the ocean, you know the surface, right? That's where most of the living things live. Yeah, you do get some things that live at greater depths, but the farther down you go, the less sunlight you're going to have, so most likely the less photosynthetic organisms you're going to have, so your food chains get really limited when you go down, right? So up here at the top would be where a lot of the living things would be found, so we would obviously think that biodiversity would be greater at the higher levels. Now, the other thing, the other factor is land. The closer you are to land, the more living things you're going to find as well. So, really, the answer is A, because this little section here, which is in the upper regions and is closest to the land, that would be where your greatest amount of biodiversity would be. So 55% of us got that one right. Um, Number 12. All right, number 12 was this Venn diagram looking thing. And which of the following would best describe X in the diagram? So we're looking for something, an answer that would sort of incorporate both the phosphorus and the nitrogen cycle. Now, the reason why I think only 35% of us got this right, I think it was because the phosphorus cycle was the one cycle that I did not give a direct lecture about. I told you that you had to watch a video, you had to read about it on your own, in the book, whatever. I gave you that. But you had opportunities to learn it independently on your own. And I just don't think a lot of you did that. I just think, well, if Mr. Shapiro didn't say it, then I don't have to know it. Well, no, that's not true. I told you that you had to learn that particular topic on your own. And another thing that I mentioned was that both phosphorus and nitrogen are both limiting nutrients, and when they are found, in abundance, let's say, then you're going to have eutrophication. So, this choice here, the anthropogenic release of excess phosphorus and nitrogen, contributes to the process of cultural eutrophication. That would be the one statement that would be true about both of those things. But it is what it is, 35%. Number 14. 14. Oops, where are we at here? 65% of us got this one. This is one where maybe your little note card could have come in handy if you wrote down the formula for NPP, right? NPP is GPP minus the respiration rate. So they give you 8,000. That's the NPP. So you just think about the equation and you're just plugging numbers in. 8,000 would equal the GPP minus the respiration. This is the respiration. It says it right here. So just ask yourself what number minus 15,000 would equal 8,000, and that would be 23,000. You really probably didn't even need a calculator for it, but whatever. If you just knew what the formula was, there will probably be an AP question on the test like this. So if you remember what that formula is, they're not going to give it to you. You can't use a note card either on the AP test. So keep that in mind. Number 15. This one, I was kind of disappointed. Of the following organisms, which occupies the lowest trophic level in a food chain? Now, I think some of you may have looked at these 5 organisms and thought that they're all members of the same food chain. That doesn't say that in the question. Okay. And you probably, at least hopefully, remember that in a food chain, the lowest level is your producers, right? So and now you don't see any producer here, right? You don't see any plant, right? But we just want to know which one would occupy the lowest level. Okay, so if there isn't a plant, then the next lowest level would be your primary consumers. Primary consumers are herbivores. They eat plants. So if you look at this list, all right, guys, spiders aren't plant eaters. However, 46% of you picked that one. All right, I'm a little worried about this one. This is like basic biology. Okay. Deer, correct answer as your primary consumer. Number 16. 61% of us got this one right. This is just a simple math problem. In a given ecosystem, producers convert solar energy into 20,000 kilocalories of chemical energy stored in organic compounds. So 20,000 kilocalories is how much energy is at the producer level. Which of the following is the most likely amount of energy available to the secondary consumers? Secondary. So I think this is probably where or why 38% of you chose 2,000. Maybe you didn't see that word secondary. All right, maybe you thought it was primary. So 20,000 at the producer. If you want to go to the primary consumers, then there would be 2,000 because it's 10% rule. You go to the secondary level and it'll be 200. All right, so the correct answer was 200. Um, I think that's a question that can easily be fixed if you just read it more carefully next time. 17, only 58% of us got this one right. The approximate efficiency of conversion of light energy to chemical energy in photosynthesis is 1%. The 10% rule is about how much energy gets transferred to each trophic level beyond that. But as far as photosynthesis goes, only 1% of the sun's energy is converted into chemical energy. Number 20 is just either you studied this or you didn't. Okay? Your ecosystem services, a provisioning service, medicinal resources by plants would be provisioning. It's a provision. Okay, that's just in the notes. Let's see, what else do we have trouble with? This is a math question, 34. This is a rule of 70. Rule of 70. Country had in 2018, a country had a population of 10 million people growing at a rate. They give you the rate, so we need to think rule of 70. 70 divided by R, divided by the rate. It says at this rate, 1.75%, the population will be close to 20 million in what year? So think about this. They want to go from 10 to 20. So that's doubling. All right. They give you the rate. So just take 70, divide it by 1.75. And that's all you have to do. And if you do that, you get 40 years. So the population starting in 2018 will double in 40 years. That's why the answer is 2058. 59% of you got that right. In the future, I hope more of you do. Because again, that's a typical AP question that you'll probably see. Another math-based question here. This one, again, this is just figuring out the growth rate, the annual percentage growth rate. So this is where inputs and outputs come into play. So you got 10,000 people in the population, 1,000 births, 200 deaths, 600 immigrants, 300 emigrants. So we got to ask ourselves, what are the inputs, right? Births and immigrants. So 1,600 inputs minus your outputs. You have 200 deaths, you have 300 emigrants. So there's what, 500 output, right? So just take 1,600 minus your 500. So that's 1,100. Divide that by your total. So 1,100 divided by 10,000. And that ends up giving you 0.11. But then you got to multiply it by 100 because it's a rate. So you get 11% for your answer. So again, this math question, I don't think it was that hard. We did these in the homework. I gave you problems like this on tests. 65% of us got it. Okay, but should have been a little higher. Oh, this question here, man, we've been missing this one for a while. I've noticed that we've been missing this on quizzes. We've been missing it on homework. All right, so here's the Earth. Now notice that the axis is straight up and down. Okay, but we know that the Earth is tilted, right? It's tilted on its axis. Now, the key here, I think, is this date, June 21st. So remember, the Earth rotates around the sun, right? Which hemisphere, the northern or the southern, is tilted towards the sun in June? It's the northern hemisphere, right? So the northern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun. The southern hemisphere is tilted away from the sun. So if the southern hemisphere is tilted away from the sun, they're not going to get as much daylight. In fact, the farther south you go from the equator, the less and less sunlight there's going to be. All right. So the answer to this is E. You know, on June 21st, which latitude shown on the diagram experiences close to 24 hours of night on June 21st? So that would be the latitudes that are closest to the south. So in this case, the only choice you would have had would have been the letter E. All right, but yeah, that one seems to be tripping people up a little bit. And I can tell because of 41% choosing the opposite answer. Okay, so be a little bit careful. I just got to think about this date. All right, that summer solstice, that's where that northern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun. If it was the winter solstice, it would be just the opposite. A couple more here. What was this one? 55. This is just interpreting a graph. A keystone species, right? Those are important because if you don't have the keystone species, I mean, look at this is the number of species present. So if there isn't a keystone species, look at what happens to that number. It drops significantly. So the richness of the community will suffer if keystone species are absent. That was the answer to that one. Last one here, which I think is maybe of some relevance, is number 56. This was the El Nino question. The diagram above shows normal ENSO conditions. How would this diagram differ during an El Nino year? Just think, guys, you have to kind of remember about the El Nino. During those years, is the trade winds are much weaker and the surface currents would be much weaker. Okay, if it was a La Nina year, it would be just the opposite. All right, where the surface currents would be much stronger and those trade winds would be a lot stronger. And that really changes a lot of things as far as climate goes in different areas of the world. All right, guys, that's it for the final exam. Um, Scores are the way they are. I didn't think we did terrible on it. I think we could have done a little bit better, but again, it is a pandemic year, so I gave you the 5% bonus. All right, guys, have a good day. I will talk to you soon.